Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up. Tonight, we gonna light it up, babe. Tonight, we gonna light it up. Just like the sunrise, we gonna light it up.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the HVAC Guide live show. We are coming to you live from Virginia in the United States. Let us know where you're located in the comments section. It's always nice seeing where everyone's located. And of course, we will be taking your questions live. It's me flying solo tonight, so it's you and me. You know, hopefully we have a moment. I don't know if you feel it. I'm already feeling it. It's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I guess. So 2 weeks we were off. So, you know, third week, I don't know, however you say that, but, we took 2 weeks off for a number of reasons. And, yeah, I'm just glad to be back with you guys. I always hate when I have to take off. I hope you guys know that I don't just take it lightly. In fact, I hung my hat with pride, knowing that for about a year and a half, I didn't miss any Tuesday nights. There were nights where it was just, I see Ryan's here. There were nights where it was just me and Ryan or nobody, me and nobody. And, but I didn't miss, you know. And then what's funny is when I do miss a week, the numbers seem to always do a little better. So numbers are pretty good so far tonight. And so thank you for taking time out of your busy Tuesday night and just hanging out with me. So, that said, I do have a question of the night. Oh, and hello to Gary as always. Sorry, your comment was a little before that. So Gary says, "Good evening, Josh. I hope I didn't miss the last 2 weeks. If you had shows, I have full notifications on, but nothing." Yes. So anytime you don't see my fat face, if you go to our community tab on the channel, I always post on there if, you know, hey, no show this week kind of thing. So if you're ever not seeing me here, go there. And I'll usually almost always post something to say, hey, sorry, no show this week kind of thing. So sorry about that, Gary. Hopefully I didn't leave you hanging too bad. Tonight's question of the night. Let me do my cute little thing here. So tonight's question is, have you ever noticed anything with your HVAC system when the season changed, right? So it was working fine in this mode, but it didn't work fine in this mode. And when that season changed, now we're coming into the summertime. For a lot of you, it's been, depending on where you are in the country, it's been summer, right? You know, I just had someone tell me the other day, we're in Florida. It's been summer. It's been above 100 degrees for the last month or two. But for the rest of us, you know, that are not in Florida or Texas or Arizona, and we're now getting to summertime, we're starting to see some higher temperatures. And my question is, have you ever seen something change, you know, something you've noticed now because of the season change? So Tech Junkie says, yeah, my reversing valve used to hang about once a year. Ooh, interesting. Time to put some boost juice or some AC Renew in there, lubricate her up a little bit. Yeah, so let's see. Ryan says, when I first bought my house, it was fall and I didn't know my AC wasn't working until spring. Yeah, the thing I see a lot with a lot of folks, especially if they have a heat pump, they'll get low on refrigerant and they'll be running on heat strips and they don't even know that the heat pump is struggling, even though their electric bill keeps getting higher and higher. And then by darn, you get to that's a term we say in the South, by the way, by darn. By darn, by the time you get to summertime, um, you don't have AC. And you're like, oh, well, this was just working fine last week in heat mode. Actually, it wasn't. Your outdoor unit has been starving for refrigerant for longer than you knew. So that's kind of where I was heading with that. Tech Junkie says heat pump worked all winter and spring. Yeah, boom, there you go. Yeah, so and then it would hang. So that's kind of what we're talking about during summer. Yeah, you wouldn't know that that you were having an issue until it was time for you to have that, right? And in your situation, Tech Junkie, it sounds like maybe you may have not even known it and you may have been having an issue with defrost mode too, right? And that might have played a role in your energy consumption because if it couldn't fully defrost properly. Brian says, "What's up, everyone?" Brian here from Central California. Always good to see you way out on the West Coast. I do my show late night for some, right? Those of us on the East Coast, because for Brian, what is the time? What time is it there, Brian? Is it 5:30, 6:30? Let's see, 3 hours there. So yeah, so 5:30 there, I would assume. And so that's why I do it later for that. I do have a story I want to get to with everybody. Um, what did he do? Oh, that yeah. Oh, the story. Hopefully that's what you're talking about. Defrost work final strange part. Yeah, interesting. Um, so Brian confirmed 5:36. Yeah, cool. Um, yeah, so I've got this story. Now let me do some citating. Hold on. That's another word I say. Citating. Um, if we jump over here, you see a bunch of folks there, bunch of disgusting folks because of what they got in trouble for. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right, so hopefully you can still hear me, but you can also see the story comes from a news organization down in Atlanta, but the county is a little, I believe, south of Atlanta, Muskogee. I'm sure that's not how you say it. A lot of those words in the South might have something to do with a Native American tribe or something like that, and I'm just simply not pronouncing it correctly. But a county down in Georgia, a 4-day operation led by Georgia officials and multiple law enforcement agencies led to the arrest of 19 people. And so here's the pictures of those folks, and I put a picture of this guy. We'll get to him in just a minute in our thumbnail for the show. So a bunch of folks that were up to no good here from April 24th to April 28th. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, and the Georgia Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force executed, quote, Operation Lights Out, unquote. The sting was to identify people who engage in sexually explicit communication with children on the internet, trying to have sex with a child, and then traveling to meet the child for sex. So, yeah, a lot of disgusting individuals. This is one of the crimes. I don't know how you guys. I would assume most normal people would feel how I do, and that is this is one of those crimes that I feel like they should lock them up and throw away the key when they're one of these folks. But this is the guy that I believe is in our thumbnail, and he was an HVAC technician up to no good. So almost 40 years old and doing obviously not good things. Charged with Computer or Electronic Pornography and Child Exploitation Prevention Act of 2007. The interesting thing, if you are one of these disgusting people, do you not understand that this is out there? Like that you're going to get caught when you're doing this stuff? I mean, I just don't understand it. Number one, I can't believe you even are like that. But do you not understand that you're going to get punished for this? You're going to get caught. Oh no, I know all about computers and I know how to not get caught. Everyone's not caught until they are caught, right? It says the GBI said more charges and arrests may be forthcoming. 12 law enforcement agencies, including local, state, and federal agencies, were a part of the operation. Last sentence here. I want to make a plea with parents to closely monitor your children to ensure they are not communicating with these individuals, said the sheriff. These predators will travel from near and far to victimize your children. We take these crimes against children very seriously. It will be our focus to find these predators so they may be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I have a friend, not to give away too much that I'm not supposed to, but I have a friend that does work very similar to this where they catch people. And they let's see if I can get this switch back over to our chat here. He told me that he has caught other police officers. He has caught professors at colleges, and that they have traveled from like the other side of the state to do these things. And so that I just think that that's crazy. Why are we even talking about this on an HVAC show? I think the main thing I wanted to talk, the only reason I saw this story and I said, there's two things I want to talk about here. And the first thing is, if you are a homeowner, first of all, I like what the sheriff said. I think more parents need to understand what their kids are doing. They I think there probably becomes a certain age where maybe, a teenage boy, I don't know. I remember I had an employee, a lady working for me years ago, and she told me that she saw what he was searching on his tablet for. And I told her back then, I was like, look, he's not searching for bombs. He's not searching how to do bad things in his school or whatever. He's searching for things that normal kids search for. Right. So I was almost kind of trying to somewhat encourage her to say, look, he's just a normal kid. But so I understand there's an age, but especially when you have children that are, say, younger than 15, definitely younger than 12, I don't think, me personally, I have a daughter. I'm going to monitor everything she does, everything, when it comes to online. So that's the first thing. I like that the sheriff said that. But from an HVAC standpoint, my wife thinks I'm nuts, but if someone comes to my house, which I don't have heating and air guys come to my house, right? I could fix my own stuff. But anybody else, so if we have a delivery driver, if we have a pizza delivery, a FedEx delivery, I don't know, years ago I had DirecTV. If a DirecTV, anybody like that comes to my house, my wife thinks I'm weird, but it is a rule I have in my house. I tell her, get her away from the windows, I don't want her to be seen. It's not, I think 99% of the folks that do that sort of work are fine. But if someone comes into my home and they start seeing, okay, that window's not latched, there's where her room, there's where her room is, there, things like that. I think if you are a homeowner and you have young kids, I think you need to be mindful of things that folks just don't think about. Okay. So that's why I wanted to bring it up on an HVAC show. I think that it's more important than people realize. Okay. But on the flip side of that coin, because I know we've got some pros here. Some of you have already commented. If you are a pro in our trade, I think that you sometimes have a front row seat to things that no one else has front row seat for. In fact, I sat in a class years ago where it was that the service that they were highlighting in the video was those folks that check gas meters. They go around from house to house to house and they check back then, it's probably all wireless now, but back then that technician, he's on site, and what they were basically teaching was he might be the only one that happens to be able to even see that something seems out of place, that there seems to be bars on that window. There seems to be someone closing the curtains every time I walk by that window. And maybe I saw something I shouldn't have seen. And maybe I saw someone, in trouble, right? That sort of stuff. And you, as a service technician, we've talked about on our show before, you might be the only person that has the chance to even save someone. And something I used to talk to my employees about. Obviously, again, we're only talking about a very small percentage of even instances, maybe in situations but just stay alert, keep your eyes peeled. Why won't that homeowner let me see certain areas of the house when in a normal situation I would be able to see that, right? What's going on? And again, maybe they have a dog, maybe they have a little girl that they just don't want you in that, whatever. Maybe they have the reasons, but be alert is the point. Especially, those of us that are good folks and they want to make sure that things are on the up and up. Keep your eyes peeled, Why is that room locked from the outside when any other normal house it would be locked on the inside, right? Things like that. So just kind of throwing that out there. Very different from anything I've ever talked about on our show before, as far as kind of what the direction we've gone so far. But yeah, so we'll get off of that. I just thought that was an interesting story there. Gary says, here in Massachusetts, we have had cool days and nights. Heat pumps still making a little heat overnight. In Virginia, there's a span of about a month where I'll have my auto changeover set where I've got a temperature range on my thermostat. And if it gets above that temperature at night, during the day, it's going to turn on the AC and bring it back down. If it gets below that temperature at night, it's going to kick on the heat. And there is about usually a month or more where we're running both kind of throughout the day. And I don't really I live on the coast of Virginia, so there's humidity. So it's not really a lot of times a place where we're going to open windows and just let a breeze come through. I'm not saying we never do that, but it's less of that. And, so yeah, so I hear you. Gary says, Miss KOG, not sure there. Brian says 19 scumbags. Come on, moms and dads, wake up already. Yeah. Yep. Ryan says you have to watch who you bring into your house closely. 100%. Or even come near your house. Why are they snooping around my house? Brian says, be vigilant, people. We could possibly be the last line of defense for these kids. Yeah, kids, adults. There's a lot of trafficking going on out there these days. Keep your eyes peeled. No doubt. No doubt. So I've got a video coming out on Thursday. Brian, I am curious out there where you are, and the rest of you too, but what's the latest you're hearing on 454B? Have you tried to order a jug of it at all? I've heard some people say things are getting better than they thought, but better is still really bad for some. I would just be okay. I don't know what any of that means. Sorry, Gary. But yeah, as I said, I've heard of some manufacturers taking charge. I've got a video launching on Thursday that kind of goes through the latest on all of this and what we're hearing, how some contractors are handling this mess that we are all in right now in our industry. And I do think it is a mess. It's been this year. And some of you might say, well, Josh, you say this every year. I don't think I do. I know I've said in the past, we're living through a crazy time, technology, blah, blah, blah. But I've never, ever seen a year like the year 2025. We had COVID a few years ago and a lot of the challenges that brought. But this year is the most challenging year I've ever seen because of this whole transition from 410A to these refrigerants and how some of these chemical manufacturers that make the refrigerants, some of the manufacturers themselves of the equipment, and the contractors, boots on ground, how a lot of them are handling these situations, because it's a mess. It really is a mess. And if you don't watch any of my other videos, check that one out on Thursday, because I just think it's just crazy. It's not just a mess, but it's being even exasperated by many others, making the situation get worse and worse because of how they're handling some of this stuff. Yeah, so I'm just curious, especially you out there in California, Brian, have you tried to order any of it, and what are you being told? You know, that's the other thing. I think sometimes they're telling us one thing, and then, so in other words, they might say, "Oh, we'll have some in 3 weeks, 2, 3 weeks," and then 2, 3 weeks goes by, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, sorry, something else happened. It's gonna be another 2, 3 weeks," right? And then they just keep stringing you along there, and they're just telling you what you want to hear, instead of just being truthful and saying, this is a friggin' mess. Who knows when we're gonna get it? It might be next year. I know we had heard reports there for a moment where some were saying as late as November, October, November. So that would tell me, if it gets any worse, now we're pushing into the year 2026. You buy a jug today, and it's going to be that long before you even get it. Ryan, another big expert in our industry who has lots of contacts, what are you hearing, Ryan? I don't know if I know you do a lot more commercial, but what are this whole mess with 454B? I think it's just a mess, man. Gary says you were worried about how to pronounce the name of the town in your opening story. It is just like the song. Well, maybe before your time. I think I know what song you're talking about, but I can't sing it right now. It's not coming to, but I think I know what you're talking about. Some supply houses have them, but some contractors are buying them all up. And I have also heard that people are reselling them for a stupid, ridiculous amount. Offer Up app, also Facebook Marketplace. The problem with Facebook Marketplace and any other website is, are you actually buying what you think you're buying? Are you buy a jug of it, and then you get it, and yeah, it's painted the right color and everything looks okay, but are you actually, I mean, I don't know, you probably are in most 99% of the cases, but I have heard crazy stories where you actually aren't. And I don't know, it's just, I do think it's a gamble on that front. I heard a guy tell me the other day that he went to order it, and they wanted, I think it was $1,400 per jug, which, to put that in perspective, literally not even a year ago, I mean, we're talking just months ago, you could buy a jug of it for $400. So $1,400 for 2 jugs, and you had to buy a pallet of another refrigerant. So like a pallet of 410A or New 22 or something like that. And then they would sell you just 2 jugs of 454B at $1,500 each. What? It's just nuts. It's just crazy. Brian says, I believe people are panicking for no reason. Just my opinion. I somewhat agree. I think panicking and buying it all up on a problem that was already bad made it worse. But my take on it is, I think there is reason. Like, I think there are people that are, and I go through that on the video that's coming out on Thursday. Ryan says, I fix old units, still repairing R22 and 410A units. I think we're seeing that in residential too, though. And I go through that in the video on Thursday, where I talk about, there might have been instances where they may have said, I'm not going to put that kind of money into an old system. But now because of this whole problem with new equipment, now maybe I will put that kind of money into an older system. It's a mess. I keep saying it's a mess because it is a mess. It is just crazy. Steve says, I have a feeling there will be a lawsuit against suppliers and manufacturers. I wondered that too, but I think that enough contractors are doing things they shouldn't, to where it may not ever get to that point. So, in other words, there are contractors that are willy nilly telling everyone, oh, yeah, I'm topping them off with R32. Oh, yeah, I'm topping them off with 410. Or not just topping them off. Maybe they're just completely putting just 410 in there. And not mixing the refrigerants necessarily, but just simply putting 410A and an R454B system. And they're telling people that. Like, I've heard that from the horse's mouth from a few contractors. And the attitude is, well, if it works, I mean, if it fails 3 years from now because the discharge temperature is too high, my warranties ran out by then. Who cares? And it's not. It's always the homeowner that ends up paying the price, right? Ryan says, due to the cost of popular U.S. branded systems, I wonder if contractors are exploring more foreign-made units that's cheaper to offer their customers, not internet brands, but brands outside the big seven. Brands like ACIQ, Oxbox, AC Pro, etc. Brands owned by big companies, but rebranded foreign-made equipment. Well, I mean, aren't most of those brands using 454B as well? I mean, I actually don't know. I don't really follow any of those brands. I know Oxbox is a Medea product, and the last time I saw Medea was doing 454B as well here in the US. I could be wrong on that, but I would think that regardless whether it's imported or made here, if it's our 454B refrigerant, the challenge is the challenge. Some of the manufacturers we're hearing are charging the systems with more refrigerant, and I guess they want a pat on the back for that. But I'm like, why shouldn't you have been doing that all along? I mean, why is this, this certainly shouldn't be a marketing announcement. You shouldn't be excited that you're announcing that you're doing your job correctly for once. you know? Uh if you're a contractor in our trade and you're not irritated, at least somewhat irritated by this, you're just a much better person than me. You are way more laid back than I am, because I get absolutely frustrated. I mean, just you'll see in the video that's posting on Thursday, I get wound up halfway through it. And I haven't done that in a while. I used to do that in some of my older videos, but I'm kind of mellowing out a little bit in my older age, I feel like, you know. Not that I'm that much older, but I think at the end of the day, some of this stuff I feel like a lot of guys in our trade, and maybe I'm included on this, is you see all these problems, but nobody seems to want to do anything about it. And when you're just one guy in little podunk town in Virginia, and you make YouTube videos and you seem to be the only guy complaining about this stuff, then what can you do? What can I do about these other than complain and inform homeowners about it? And other techs, I try to inform other technicians about this stuff too. If they don't have a good source of information, maybe I was the one that was able to get them in the know on something. And that's part of the goal here too, is make sure everybody's on the same page. Ryan says, no, this is outside R454B. It's more about the crazy prices of change outs now. It's becoming a luxury to have AC or go into debt for cooling and heating. 25K plus change outs are the new norm now. I don't disagree with you, especially with we're seeing all kinds of outside investment firms dip their toe into our industry. And, at the end of the day, they don't care about if Mrs. Jones was taken care of. They only care about the bottom dollar. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because every time I say stuff like that, guys will get in here and they'll say, that's capitalism, Josh. Well, of course it is. But I do think that there is something to be said for, mom and pop business, Bobby's Heating and Air, who used to be the dad's business, and that's who Bobby was. And now Jimmy owns the business. because he's Bobby's son. And Jimmy's just trying to take good care of Mrs. Jones down the street, who, maybe he went to school with her son and she lost her husband last year and times have been tough. And, he just wants to do the right thing and take good care of her. We're almost penalized in our industry to be good at what we do. Right. So when I had my business, I was almost penalized monetarily because I knew my trade better than the next guy. And I say this wholeheartedly. There's nobody, I don't know about in the state, there's some pretty smart folks right out there. But there's nobody in my area that knows how to do what I do better than me. Right. Josh, you sound cocky. Well, I hope the next guy feels the same way I do. If not, what's he doing? Right. Like, I feel like I'm the best HVAC technician, definitely in my county. I've seen the competition. So I feel like I'm the best, but I was almost penalized for being the best because I could get Mrs. Jones's system going in an hour, and Mrs. Jones don't want to pay a premium price for only an hour of work. She wants to pay the going rate. She wants to pay $125 an hour, right? Whereas the next guy who couldn't figure out how to get that system going, but he's really good at sales. He's really good at telling Mrs. Jones they're great financing options, and he's going to get good commission off that system that he sold. And he is rewarded monetarily better than I am. I'm a way better technician than him, way better at this trade than him, but I'm penalized for that. I'm not allowed to charge a premium price for my time because now I'm just taking advantage of Mrs. Jones, and she's going to leave me a 1-star review over it. Right. And that's not any of y'all's problem. I'm just trying to paint the picture that a lot of guys in our industry are up against. It's almost like we're penalized at times to be good at what we do. And you almost kind of got to weigh that, walk that line. I have guys that I meet with on New HVAC Guide. We have a groups where we meet with pros, and, it's not really a coaching thing. I'm not a guru like some of these guys claim to be, but we put them in a group and you get to rub elbows with other guys fighting the same fight you are. And, that's one of the struggles that they talk about. They're like, hey, I want to be fair to Mrs. Jones. I'll never lie to her, but I still want to charge a premium rate here. So I really think that that's the solution. If you are in the trade, you've got to do the right thing. I mean, not to get spiritual with you, but if you plant bad seeds, you're going to reap a bad harvest, right? So you plant good seeds, you're transparent with folks, but you got to charge a premium rate. You got to stay in business. And if that means Mrs. Jones never calls you again because Mrs. Jones can't afford you, then you're right. Mrs. Jones can't afford you. You've got to be the guy. And that's as Ryan says, that's the moral dilemma. That was my moral dilemma. I struggled with that at times. And at some point, after getting stepped on so many times, you eventually say, I'm not being stepped on anymore. I'm going to charge what I am worth, and I'm going to take good care of folks, and I'm going to offer the best products. If they can't afford the best, they can call the next guy. I'm going to do my best at, is Mrs. Jones hot? Dude, she is so hot. There's this funny, I heard this funny song not that long ago. I don't know if y'all ever heard Stacy's mom has, I don't know, something like that. Well, anyway, this one was it was this comedian. He said, Stacy's mom needs to put her clothes on. He's only 15 or whatever. I don't know. I just thought that was hilarious. R32 is more or less about 450 a cylinder. Okay. How about 454B? Out your way, pal. Edward says, I am about to get AC for my pole barn garage. Is purchasing a unit with 410A the best now with 454B sky high prices? Thank you. Well, Edward, I'm just going to sound biased, but I think your best option is R32 because you're going to be in the, an A2L refrigerant. It's single component. It's better. It's better in all better capacity. The only situations is if you're in the Arctic, way up in the northern parts of Canada, there are certain climates where maybe 454B is going to perform better. But other than that, the rest of us down in the US, you're never going to see too many times where R32 isn't going to outshine from a capacity, a performance standpoint. It doesn't have PFAs where 410A and 454B both do. If you don't know what PFAs are, look it up. They're forever chemicals. They cause all kinds of problems with developmental effects with toddlers and certain cancers and decreased fertility with women and risk of obesity. I always blame my chubbiness on PFAs. That's just me. Fidel says it's a great group. Thanks, Fidel. Fidel's in one of our groups on our website. And yeah, it's I think it's a good time. Just got to find the middle line. Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. Walk that line of being transparent and good to folks, but also, being paid what you're worth. So here in California, currently a jug of 454B. Oh, wow. You better buy a few of those. Here in Virginia, I'm not hearing anyone charging less than $1,000 now. I'm hearing some say $1,200 to $1,400. Some say you can pay that, but then you got to buy a pallet of something else. And then some say that they're being charged as much as $2,000, if not $3,000 for a jug, one jug. Steven says, preach it. Customers will weed themselves out if you let them. I get on my high horse sometimes. Y'all just have to, bear with me. Ryan says, helped a relative select a pro to install her system in PA, and the price difference from North Carolina was 2 to 3x. I think the price of equipment not install should be like iPhones. So are you saying it was higher in Pennsylvania or lower in Pennsylvania? I'm just curious because I know you and I have had talks about prices before, and I felt like, you being near Charlotte, your prices were higher than where I'm at. In fact, I feel like our prices where I'm at seem lower than just about anywhere. And you got to charge what you got to charge to stay busy. And if you don't, then you won't be busy and the next guy will do it for less. There's a lot of that here. Steve says, speaking of that, I saw a post. Someone needed an HVAC in Virginia Beach and I gave them your email. I said, this guy will know the answer. Hope you didn't mind. No, I don't mind at all. In fact, I know the perfect guy for them to use. So hopefully I didn't see an email come from them on that, but once I do, I know a great guy. East Coast says hedge fund HVAC is the future. How much can I get and comfortable payment planned? Are you asking how much for the system or how much for your business? Or you got to elaborate a little bit for me there. Ryan says same price everywhere for equipment, but profit, overhead, etc. can be based on geographic area. Just crazy how the prices were different. I'd offer them to fly down to get me a new system. To be there on the day it needs a change out, you need to be there all along. Got to take the bag with the small. It all averages out. Yeah, I always would tell customers, you're don't give me the crumbs if you're going to give them the slice of pie, right? So I will take care of you and give you fair prices on repairs. But then if it comes time to replace that system and you're going with some schmo down the street that is going to do it, for beer money, I'm a licensed and insured company with a premium warranty and all the fixings. And don't call me on a Saturday to repair that system. Don't give me crumbs if you gave them the slice of pie. That's what I would always tell them. And we actually had to fire a couple of customers over that. As bad as that sounds, we had a few customers that, they would do us dirty. And I'd always tell my employees, look, we got to take care of our customers. At the end of the day, the customer pays our paycheck, not me. I don't sign your paycheck, although I literally did, but the customers pay your paycheck, right? We got to take good care of our customers. But at the same time, I was not a doormat, and I would not allow my own employees to be doormats. If there were, you know, customers that were just very much unreasonable and just absolutely ugly to my employees, we would not be ugly back. We would just say, "Hey, listen, I don't think we're a fit here," and we would just move on. Life's too short, right? Dude that runs my local Goodman distributor loves your channel. In fact, he brings it up every time I go in there. Nice. We should do an on location video with your guy there at that distributor, Ryan. I actually went to a Goodman distributor up in Northern Virginia, so probably very it might be like the same regional manager that does both. And you know, none of those guys knew who I was until one guy walked in and he was like, "I think I know who you are. I've seen your fat face on YouTube before." So Paul says, "If I don't do your Monday work, I don't do your Sunday work." That's I wish I had that one under my belt back when I had my company. That's funny. It is much harder to get your HVAC license than in PA. So much less competition here in South Carolina. Okay. I never thought of it that way, but I bet that does play a role in all of that. You know, if it's hard to get your license. In fact, I've been surprised here in Virginia because I thought the getting the license was, I don't want to say it was like so hard, but I thought it was, it was certainly challenging. And I've bumped into other people. I'm like, how did you get a license? How did you make it through the testing and all of that? So maybe it's not as hard as I once thought. Ryan says, I was once offered an HVAC leasing agreement, basically pay 250 to 300 a month for 10 years, and I wouldn't have to pay for any maintenance, filters, warranties, etc. Do the math. That's 30 to 36K rental. Wow. Yeah, it's almost like those companies that offer lifetime warranties, but then there's a monthly payment for their maintenance. And if you do the math, you are paying, a lot of money over the years. Um, but yes, I mean that is true. So if you're paying 300 a month, that's almost $4,000 a year. So let's round down. Let's just say it's $3,000 a year after 10 years. That's 30 grand. I mean, that's wow. There maybe that's the trick, right? You know, maybe that's the trick for some of you heat and air companies that are just barely getting by. I talked to a guy that worked for one of those leasing companies one time. I was at this trade show thing and I didn't understand leasing. And I still don't really understand it, if I'm honest, because if the leasing company owns the equipment, and this is what I was talking to him about, if they own the equipment and then you stop paying them, what then? And I think if I remember correctly, he told me, well, they just send you a bill to just pay for the system, or they don't, if you've been paying long enough. But that's a really good point. So within 3 years, if they were charging, say, $9,000 per system and $3,000 a year, after 3 years, they're now in the black, and then it's straight pure profit from there. That's insane. That is insane. Let's see. Ryan says, Greg, where are you in South Carolina? I am on the border. Steve says, do you watch other HVAC channels? If so, who are your favorites? So funny you asked that. And I'm not trying to schmooze Ryan, but if you've never seen the HVAC Misfits, if you're in the trade, they mostly their audience is guys in the trade. That's probably my favorite podcast show. Just because they do kind of what I wish I always did do, which is basically get a group of folks on there and have fun. And they have different guests and stuff like that. So I like the Misfits. I've been liking Ty Branham and stuff, but maybe that's just because I've been agreeing with him on a lot of the stuff he's putting out. So I don't know if y'all follow Ty, but he was on our show a few weeks ago, and he's just a wholesome, nice guy. I like him. But to answer your question, I try to watch everybody. I've my claim to fame especially if anytime I talk to a guy that's starting out and they're like, how do I get ahead? I'm like, that's easy. go home tonight and I want you to watch 5 Brian Orr videos. And then tomorrow night, I want you to watch 5 Craig Migliaccio videos. And then the next night, I want you to watch 5 Ty Branneman videos, and then just keep going. And if you do that for 2 months straight, you will be smarter than most of the guys that are running around here in trucks. You just will be. You'll be consuming so much of it. Now, I know everybody learns different. Some folks don't learn that way. They learn, with by the hands, and they can't absorb it. But that was always kind of my claim to fame is I listened to more videos or podcasts on our trade, at least for the first 5 years I was in business, than anyone. And I would put that up against anybody because it's all I did. If I was in the truck, I didn't listen to music. I listened to podcasts on HVAC. If I was at home, I didn't watch as much. I watched a little TV probably, but I watched a lot of videos. I got YouTube Premium because the commercials were holding me back too much. And then I would go down to the little speed down at the bottom, and I would change it from 1 to 1.5, so they would get through the information even quicker. And yeah, I mean, you'll be so far beyond most of the guys. In fact, I can prove it. I mean, I talk to some of the folks in our trade sometimes, and I'm like, what about this or that? And you can tell that, they're like deer in headlights. They don't know what you're talking about. And not in a mean way. They just don't. They're not consuming all that information, and they're not just constantly putting all that knowledge. And I don't claim, by the way, I don't claim to be the best, but I do claim to be listening to videos and shows from the best. Right. And if you do enough of that, some of this stuff starts to click. You start to understand, oh, this system, inverter systems, right? I still bump into guys today that they're just so intimidated by inverter systems. And I'm like, go watch videos on that. Eventually it won't be I'm not saying you'll ever walk up to a system and immediately go bang, that's what's going on, but it stops being less so intimidating. It's different, right? You're not testing the same things. Now you got all these thermistors and EV coils and all these codes and error messages and all these things that you didn't have with a conventional single stage unit, but you do it enough and all of a sudden it starts clicking, So anyway, I love that question, Steve. I really appreciate that. That's really good. Ryan says, Josh, you got to get back in business, man. Lots of money out there. Yeah, don't tempt me with a good time, man. If I could have found good help, I'd probably still be in the game. I just think my standards were so high, and I only found like 3-4 people that could keep high standards. And then to find another was just like pulling teeth, and we were falling short on jobs because of it. And remember, had one employee curse at the customer. And I'm like, why do I have to explain to you? This woman's paid us thousands of dollars. Why do I have to explain to you that that's not okay? Right? I mean, you just get burnt out after a while of that, right? Greg says, I was bypassed a lot of red tape here in South Carolina because I had a license in PA. Oh, okay. Very cool. It's interesting how some states bleed over and some don't. Steve says, if you don't pay, they probably put a lien on your house. It was rent to own. After 10 years, you own it. Yeah, that's interesting. So some of the leasing guy I talked to, you never own it. Like you just keep going. And then, what he was telling me is eventually the system does get to a point where it just makes sense to replace it, and they give you a new system. But they've made so much money off of you based on the math that you already pointed out that of course they'll just nicely replace that system, right? They'll put some junky system in there, cheapest they can put in there, and your utility bills are not liking it, and they're already off and running with making so much profit off of leasing that system. It's a very interesting business model, and it's even more interesting that some homeowners actually do like it. It's very odd. Brian says, what's 454B per pound going for over there in your neck of the woods? I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't have my business anymore, and I know what the jugs are being sold for, if you can even find one. But I mean, if you just simply do the math. So one thing we always did at my company is we might have been lower per pound, but we were not flat rate on refrigerant. So we were, let's say all the other companies were charging $100 per pound on something. We might have only been $50 per pound, but then we were charged the actual labor rate of how long the technician. And I would say in a lot of cases it all kind of evened out, but there were times where maybe they would have been a lot higher or whatever. But that's just how we did it at my company, and I just felt like it was the most fair. Um, Sorry, I'm just kind of jumping through the comments here. Not Let's see. Brian says, so very true, Josh. They are very informative. Yeah. So uh see here, I talked about how great Ryan's Misfits show is, and then he dipped out. I haven't seen him in the chat since. Just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, this has been my gosh, this has been this show has flown by. We've just been kind of rolling here in the chat. And good to have all you guys. I actually planned to start the night out, and I will say towards the end of the show here, and that is a word of gratification, because I remember, like I said, I remember when it was just me and Ryan. Not that long ago either. Ryan will tell you. I mean, we're talking not long ago. Folks hadn't found us, or maybe they had lost us. I know I'd tried to move everything to a new channel, and that didn't work out. And so now we've got the HVAC guide for homeowners and the HVAC guide for pros channels. And then we're kind of streaming to both. And that seems to be working out. But as far as the gratification goes, I do very much appreciate anybody that takes time out of their Tuesday night to hang out with us. I definitely appreciate that. And I see some smiley faces popping up down there. If you don't mind hitting that like button, that does help us out. Helps the algorithm out, I guess. I don't really know. But I do know that if you hit the subscribe button and then that little bell, every time we post a new video, you get notified about it. So there's that too. While I go through our last questions here, and I will get through all your questions, so if you have any more, drop them in there. But we know there's bad apples in our industry. I like highlighting the good apples, the ones that make us look good, and the ones that have taken good care of you. So if you know a good apple, if you know a good heating and air, electrical, or plumbing company here in the United States or Canada, drop the name of the company and where they're located in the chat. You might be able to show them some love, or maybe even send a little business their way if someone in your area sees it. And yeah, and we'll highlight it down here on the screen if you do that. Steve says, echo, no loyal help. They want to grab your customers after 32 years here, burned out, but got to keep on keeping on. Yeah. I hear you, dude. I hear you. I actually think that I think if I could go back, I probably would have pivoted Griffin Air into being a mini split business only. And then just, I wouldn't have had to work so hard, but we would have been so much more profitable, partly because I don't think half the companies around here know what they're doing when it comes to mini splits. So we could have specialized in that, taken good care of folks, and then just did that. Edward says, what system would you suggest for heat and AC unit in my 24 by 30 garage in Pennsylvania? Thank you for your wisdom. If you can spare a little bit of floor space, we just did this in my church. So my church, we have this, what we call the pavilion. And so we've got the church building, but then we have the pavilion in the back, which is this detached building, and they do events in there and things like that. But the pavilion it's basically, imagine a 4-car or 5-car, I think it's 4-car garage with bay doors that you could pull in and out of. So imagine 4 bays with a kitchen, so there's this concrete slab with these roll-up doors, and we had to figure out how to heat and cool it. So we literally just took air handlers with ductwork that just scooped the air on top to push it across the space. And we put 5-ton units in there. We did 2 5-ton units and a 2-ton mini split in the kitchen, and it does amazing. So garages, if you're just looking to kind of knock the chill off on a winter day, then you might get a mini split. But if you want to actually heat and cool that space and keep it comfortable, you don't even have to do a lot of duct work. You just put a scoop on the top, pushing air. You put a plenum on the bottom with a return grill, so you can replace filter right there. And I've done that in multiple garages and never heard a complaint. In fact, it was an actual customer, a homeowner, that taught it to me. He was like, I don't want many splits. I want to do just a furnace. I want you to put a piece of duct and just shoot it across the garage. And I was like, well, I guess we can do that. And we did. And it worked, wonderfully, especially if installed right. That I really think that's the way to go. So he did a furnace and coil, but at my church, we just did air handlers, so it was heat pump outdoor unit with air handlers, and they turned out amazing, actually. Yeah. If people already have leaks on A2L equipment, to need to know per pound price, that's sad. I think part of it, I agree, right? If somebody's having an issue within the first year or even first couple months, but what if you do have a problem and you can't get the refrigerant? Or I think in instances where you do have long line sets and you've got to add a little refrigerant there to top the system off and get it going, dial in that subcool, and you can't get the refrigerant, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. If you guys are still here, make sure you check out my video that should be launching on Thursday. I don't remember what we're calling it, but it's something like the mess of 454B or something like that, the latest on it, because we're going to talk about a few of the things contractors are saying that they're doing. Mitsubishi H2 mini split for your garage. It makes heat down in the negative numbers, no duct work. Yeah, I mean, depending on where you are in the country, there are mini splits out there. I'm a Daikin guy, but Mitsubishi, I mean, whatever. Daikin's one of the sponsors on our channel. Daikin's what I sold at my company, and I always thought they did a little better at heating. I think they all blow cold. When it came to heating, I think the Daikin Aurora is hard to beat. But if you're a Mitsubishi guy and just, especially if you are anywhere that gets somewhat cold, go Hyperheat or go Aurora. But the Daikin Otera, which is not even their top of the line, does what a lot of times the top of the line units do for some of the other brands. So that's one of the things I just always liked about them. Brian says, not sure if you still have the Daikin sponsorship, but their air purifiers are on discount now. I bought a bunch and really like them. I got one right over here. So as far as I know, they're still sponsoring us. Gary says, hanging until the end, but want to say good evening, Josh, and to our fine group here. Thanks, Gary. Always good to see you, pal. Let's highlight some good companies. Brian says, Valley Wide Home Improvements out of Fresno County, out in California. Shout out. Brian says, T&C Heating and Cooling in Charlotte, and Super Cool HVAC in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good enough. H2 is a Hyperheat. Brian says, what are your overall thoughts on a Fujitsu mini split? I did a couple of them when I was when I had my company, and I didn't have too many, anything real bad to say about them. I never felt like, I actually do think there's some cool things that Mitsubishi does. They got that one recessed unit, right? And then I think there's things that Daikin kind of does better than anybody else, right? That everybody in here knows that I drink the Daikin Kool-Aid. They're the only manufacturer I've ever even had on our channel because they're the one that I believe in the most. That said, I never felt like Fujitsu kind of had that cookie that the next, like no one else has kind of thing, but I never had any problems with their stuff. I've got a friend of mine I forget what they call it, right? So Mitsubishi has their Diamond dealers. Daikin has their DCPs, their Daikin Comfort Pros. Fujitsu's got some program too. So I've got a friend that's one of those. He's their gold dealer or whatever it is they call it. They call it something. but whatever it is, he's one of those, and he likes them a lot. He doesn't have a good Daikin supplier in his area, and he's just always done Fujitsu, and that's what he likes. So I think a lot of that boils down to, your supplier, your distributor, your infrastructure. Do you have somebody you can pick up the phone and call if there's something wrong? A lot of that goes a long way, especially if you're a guy in the trade, right? Homeowners, y'all don't care about any of that, right? As long as it works, when you pay all that money, by gosh, it should work and not have a high electric bill, right? So yeah, very cool. I'll be back next Tuesday night, folks. I do appreciate this is for all of you. Nice big heart for everybody that's here. And again, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Appreciate all of you. In the meantime, make it a great week. Take care.